I'm JJ Perez with Inside Runner Sports. That's Greg Lucas, San Antonio Express News. We're coming to you from the
Sun Bowl.
Historic Sun Bowl in the side of the mountain
For the
here
last time ever.
in El Paso. Roadrunners come away with the big win. Greg, 44-23.
Indeed.
UTSA dominates this thing kind of from start to finish tonight.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it was domination overall to begin with, but as the game went on, it became more and more clear that that the offense for me was the storyline.
Yeah.
To score on their first 8 possessions, and they could have gone 9 for 9.
Yeah.
If they wanted to at the
Right,
end.
yeah.
Obviously, there was a little bit in the beginning having to settle for field goals on 3 of those drives, and maybe a little bit of stalling here and there, but I mean, that's like the nittiest of nitpicks.
Right.
To complain about anything with the way that they performed. And I think starting with Sincere McCormick makes sense. 75-yard touchdown.
Boom.
Right out of the game.
Right at second play from scrimmage.
And it was like, that was not an isolated incident. Like
yeah.
He seemed so much fresher and more decisive, I thought.
For me, it was the cuts.
Yes, correct.
It was like the vision and being able to execute that. And we hadn't...
How about the one that got called back?
Yeah, that was amazing down
Yeah.
there. I don't think we've seen that all season from him.
There were, I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm just wrong, but it felt like there were plays in these games before now where he would get a handoff and he might just like run into the line, or he would be a little bit slow to find a hole and get through it. And this game, it was like, even if the line was clogged up, we're seeing him bounce it outside and kind of make something happen in ways that was just like a lot like what we saw last year, and just a level of explosiveness and decisiveness that has just been rare.
The old Sincere McCormick tonight in the Sun Bowl.
That's how I felt, yeah.
Yeah, Frank Harris had a pretty good game too. I mean, him and Zakari connected a few. UTEP couldn't guard that slant or post route.
It was a very basic
weird
deal, and I guess maybe it was because Zakari it felt like he was lined up in the slot a little bit more than usual, and maybe somehow that just tore their whole game plan apart. But for whatever reason, it felt like he was open anytime they wanted to go to that. And I think he ended up with 10 grabs, and 5 or 6 of them were those slant patterns, it felt like, and he just could get whatever they wanted off of that. And I mean, it was important plays too. They scored 2 touchdowns that way. They had a couple third down conversions, I believe, that way as well. And
big.
It was just something that was there for them. I don't know. And then Sincere caught a couple passes out of the backfield too, and I bring that up because it felt like, I don't feel like they had to bust open the playbook too deeply. They were able to just kind of run some pretty basic stuff, and it just got there.
Staying on the offense, Frank Harris, we heard, was kind of banged up headed into this one. Looked a little iffy in pregame, but I mean, when
he
the
looks
game,
like he looks, He never moves around like a normal person.
What did he say? He's like, "Did I look banged up when I ran?" And he
didn't
not
look any different than normal. But
so
he always kind of walks around a little bit funny.
Like old man, 118-year-old old man, I believe is what Jeff Traylor called him.
Jeff Traylor said he was older than a lot of the people in the Old Testament. Is that right? Something like that. So, we have seen that. It's just kind of the way that he moves around is not looks like a caliber of athlete that he is, but he always, at least this season, always delivers on the field in a really major way. This is another great game for him.
Defense side of the ball, it was a little chippy out there, wasn't it?
Yeah, I thought it felt like the defense was relatively strong, and there were a couple plays where UTEP was just able to either find holes in the zone. I thought there was something about the zone coverage that UTEP was able to. So I felt like the UTEP was picking apart the zone, and then I looked and the quarterback had 2 completions.
Yeah. It
for
felt
the first
different
27 minutes.
than what it was.
There was the one breakdown that led to the touchdown, and then there was another pretty big gain near midfield, and then really that was it for the first half until that final drive where they got the late field goal. And they had the running back get like a 32-yarder, which is the first time anybody has run for 20 or more yards on a carry against UTSA this season. They hadn't allowed any big runs. So in that sense, maybe it stood out a little more than it should, just because they've been pretty good about limiting some of these plays. But on a down-to-down basis, it felt like they were able to keep UTEP under wraps, and there wasn't that much danger. Yeah,
this place was rocking at 30,000 plus today, and it was a good atmosphere, and for the Roadrunners to kind of win going away. I mean, the last 3 games have been kind of decided.
Yeah, by 20-something points or more.
Well before the game, like the game was over. It's certainly different than what we've seen.
It was insane, because the first, I forget the stat off the top of my head, but it was like Traylor's first 16 games across 2 years, like 13 of them were within 1 score in the fourth quarter or whatever. And now from Rice to Louisiana Tech to here, it's just so decisive that they're just putting these games away. And to me, the single most remarkable thing about this season is, and this happens every year in college football, but you just like flip through the scores on a day-to-day basis. And it's like, that team didn't really show up today. But the UTSA shows up every
9
game.
games in, 10 weeks in, there has not been a letdown from
And not
this
to
squad.
say that they were dominant every week, because like we just talked about, they weren't. Like certainly the Western Kentucky game was inches from being a loss. But they never have a game where it's just like they look totally flat, or they look like they're just kind of out coached or outmanned or whatever. Like every single week they look like they're playing at or close to their best, and especially in these recent games. So I can only assume that that's a testament to the coaching, just to have them ready to go and to have a game plan that never looks like they are kind of out of line or out of place, right? So I think that says a lot about just the strength of this team is the consistency, which is kind of obvious when you're 9-0, but it's remarkable overall.
Let's take a big picture look at the UTSA Roadrunners, where they stand 9-0. On the drive over here, I was telling you, it feels like we're at a crescendo point here where the excitement around the program, Jeff Traylor's contract extension this last week, getting snubbed by the college football playoff ranking, and the AP national ranking continuing, and just man, it's just a lot of stuff happening for the Roadrunners.
I have friends, like, this is what happens when UTSA is undefeated and they're nationally ranked. Like, my friends, like, from Connecticut, like, want to talk about the Roadrunners now. And I told them this week that between Traylor's extension and the energy surrounding that, having the open week after 8 straight weeks, and then just
snub.
right on top, just in case they were going to get comfortable, to have the CFP thing with the USTA deal. It was all converging perfectly for this to be their best game.
They would have ran through a wall against anyone.
Nobody
tonight.
in my post-game interviews would bite on that. And they say they show up every week, and like we talked about, they do.
They do,
But there was something special about all the factors this week that it made it feel like this was going to be the kind of dominant showing that it ended up being.
Do the Roadrunners deserve to be ranked by the college football?
The answer is no different than it's been every other week. Right. We know that maybe there's 25 plus teams that are favored against them on a neutral field, and it's, what do you care about? Do you care about the common opponents, or do you care about there's probably no relevant head-to-heads, but you know what I'm saying? Like, there's all the different factors that you can weigh. Or do you care about the analytics, where they probably don't look as good? Or do you care about this as a team that is, first of all, if you want to look at like recency, which it seems like in some cases the
that
CFP
matters.
does value recency, that they're playing at their highest level at this moment.
So,
I mean, I'm going to just say yes, like, sure.
Right on.
Because there's not, I just don't think there's a strong enough case with all the analytics to just say we're going to leave these guys out even though they're 9-0 and they're playing their best right now.
Quite the teams falling this week that were
I think
ahead
there
of
was
them.
I think there was like three or four, maybe like Fresno State, I believe, lost to Boise. I know Mississippi State lost, I think, somewhere in the 19 to 20 or 21 range. There was one or two more. So, there's certainly going to be openings, but it's just, you have no idea. It's not like the AP where you know who receives votes and who's right off the list. There could be any number of teams that are going to move up, or that the CFP just decides, we actually liked them better all along. Sometimes these things take time, and maybe it'll be till 10-0 or 11-0 or 12-0 where they have to finally get that respect, but seems plausible, maybe with all the backlash they got, that helps too, but it seems plausible that UTSA would make the cut this week.
We hit on everything. You think we got everything in? It's a crazy time here for the Roadrunners, just like all the stuff that's just been going on. And I mean, it's Jeff Traylor said in postgame, it's kind of wild that they're 9-0.
Yeah, we never talked about the contract on video. If you want to do that.
No, let's touch base on that. 10 years, $28 million total guaranteed money, 2.8 average annual. Pretty big commitment from both sides.
Yes, I think that's a good way to say it, because with the $7.5 million buyout from Traylor, he's probably going to be here unless it's Texas or Texas A&M that comes calling. And then maybe that changes a few years down the line as that number gets lower. But then I think it's also important to note that UTSA is only on the hook for 60% of his remaining salary if they do decide that this thing isn't working out as well as they thought in a few years.
10 years is a long time.
That's a weird thing to say tonight, because they're killing it.
But 10 years is a long time for a program that's only played 10 years.
I mean, this is like such a downer thing to bring up, but I wrote in my story that, a year and 2 months into Frank Wilson's reign, he looked pretty damn good, because they were 5-2 and they thought he might go to Ole Miss. And imagine if you signed that guy to a 10-year contract. But this is a higher level than they ever hit with that staff by a long shot. So I'm not going to say that that's a direct comparison, but it just speaks to the idea that there is a risk in signing anybody for that long. But if they hadn't have done it, imagine just the damage that it would have done to this momentum and to this moment they're having.
I mean,
with all of the things that are working their way to move into the AAC and to have the best season in program history and to be in the rankings, all these things that we thought were kind of unthinkable before the year. If you have to have the very foundation, the guy who kind of built that, you have to find a replacement. Maybe they would have found somebody great, but the point is, it's just kind of a reset, and at a time when that's the last thing that you want.
My thing is, Jeff Traylor's told us all along on the record that he wanted to be here for the long term, and I don't think anybody kind of took him serious about that because of who was courting him
and just because it's how it works,
rumors.
Right?
Like,
that's nobody else really operates that way.
Yeah.
A lot of people
Nobody
want to just
does.
jump to the next job.
But you said it best. This guy is a different guy. Like, he stayed at Gilmer forever.
Right. And I understand
passed
that's a little
other
bit different.
places.
And Texas was the first like high enough level job that he wanted to take it. And I get that it's not a one-for-one comparison. But if you really were just about jumping up the ladder as fast as possible, you could have found some entry point to college before that, in that 15-year span, or even a higher level high school that gets you an entry point to college. And just clear that he's not a guy who values jumping up the ladder above all else. He's a guy who values building and commitment and wants this to be something special. And it speaks to, he's told us from the start, this was a job that I always had my eye on. And
dream job.
It's like, I bet everybody says that when they get hired. Maybe it was true.
Yeah.
And that's why
this
he
is the
wants to stay
gamble
here.
he set this week.
Yeah, that was a really, really fun interview and a good quote. And he kind of underscored all the things that we're saying now. And I think the one part that you have to mention is something like a move to a Texas Tech would come into play if they didn't feel like they were going to provide him the resources here to be competitive, which is especially a higher demand with the move to the AAC.
Yeah.
And so it's important
Like,
in
you
the
have
contract.
to have it. Yeah.
It's important in the contract that they wrote in the assistant salary pool, and they wrote in some of the stuff as far as strength and conditioning and support staff and these things that are going to make it possible to compete here. And apparently there's even more than that going on kind of behind the scenes to make sure that the players, just have what they need to play at the highest possible level.
Yeah, I think it's 2 extra strength guys, another recruiting guy, another operations guy, and then the raises. That was the thing people don't realize when Frank Wilson's his first year, his staff got raided, and it was the guys that were here, they weren't here anymore. And Jeff said it a few times during interviews that it's like starting all over when something like that happens.
He said he wants to keep the staff together forever, for 10 years. Yeah. So if they can do that, clearly they have a lot of things working in their favor right now. So, it was a move that had to be made, and it's a huge cause for celebration, as you captured on your video, that this got done, because it means so much for the ability to continue this magical run that they're on.
Especially with the AAC thing there, that's like a ticking clock that you're going to get there, and you have to be able to compete, and this kind of gives them a leg up.
Right. I mean, if you just look at this year's team and the success that they're having, obviously they're right there with anybody maybe outside of Cincinnati.
Yeah.
And being higher ranked than all those guys and having the resume that they have. So, but this is not your standard UTSA season by any means, and it takes a lot to be sustainable at that kind of a level, and the level that they're playing at right now. So from that perspective, they did need to make all of these upgrades, but it seems like they're saying and doing all the right things to this point in terms of the commitment to increase the overall athletics budget too, and all the things that they want to do to make this a place that Jeff Traylor can win for the foreseeable future.
Exciting times for the UTSA Roadrunners, as man, what a week it's been coming off that bye week. It was supposed to be chill, but got a little wild.
It was the least chill week of the year, to be honest. But
it'd be like that sometimes, right?
Yeah, and then we got 2 home games, which will be interesting for us to not have to travel, and hopefully no shenanigans in between.
No non-travel shenanigans.
But it's relevant as well to the UTSA in terms of it's been a while since
Pack
a home
the dome,
game,
right?
Especially if Southern Miss is bad. Everybody knows Southern Miss is bad. They're probably a 4-touchdown favorite in that game or something insane. But
all eyes on UAB.
As that momentum continues to build, what is it going to look like in there when UAB comes to town, and how much of a difference does that make? Because, maybe UAB hasn't been as impressive with that loss to Rice that kind of threw everybody for a loop, but that's still a really good team, and that's the game that I think from the start of the year we thought the conference race could come down to.
It was going to come down to it, circled on the calendar.
It still might well could, so it'll be interesting to see how the fan support rallies behind that, because it's something that's always been talked about from the start.
Well, that'll wrap it up here from the Sun Bowl. Next week, UTSA and Southern Orange out next week in the Dome.
Indeed, Orange out.
We'll see you guys then. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it.